and we're going to talk about intraoperative aberrometry, which I think is a great tool for refractive cataract surgery. So I have no financial interest in WaveTech or Alcon. I am a consultant for Clarity, which is developing something similar. So intraoperative autorefraction. Basically, you wait till the eye is aphakic, you inflate it to about 20 millimeters of mercury, and by doing measurements and then you've input preoperative information, the aura system will basically give you the spherical power calculation and also the cylindrical power and the axis. And then for the pseudophakic, then you put the lens in, and then you get a pseudophakic refraction. And you might think, well, maybe we can confirm if we have the right power, but that's actually not correct, because by the time you inflate the eye, it pushes the IOL back, and you don't really get the correct power, spherical power. But you can look at the cylinder and adjust your treatment. You could rotate the toric axis or do astigmatic keratotomy or titrate it, and that's what we'll talk about. So where do I use this currently? I use it for post-LASIK patients. I do the spherical power for it. Certainly for every toric patient I'm using it because I get a confirmation of, do I want to put in this spherical power, this cylinder, and this axis? Every time I do astigmatic keratotomy, I use this now to titrate my AK, and then finally I will use it for a multifocal, A, to confirm the power, and B, to look for maybe astigmatism that I wasn't planning to treat, but I don't want to leave the operating room with any astigmatism there. So this, of course, is our real big challenge for all of us, and that's selecting the IOL power in post-LASIK PRK eyes. I was a co-author on this study that came out in January of last year. It's really the first and only study that really looked at intraoperative aberrometry, and it's in this group. And so the idea was take a bunch of patients, let the surgeon use their standard method, which usually involved the ASCRS online calculator, and then to compare that to the aura, as well as comparing it to two formulas that didn't really require prior history, the Hagus-L and the Shamus. And then to see which of these gave the least amount of mean or median error. So there were 246 eyes in this study, multiple surgeons, and you can see that for the error, whether you look at the mean or the median, the aura system gave you the best results. But the way I like to look at it is, and this is just the comparison to the other formulas, if you just look at within a half diopter, look at how 2/3 now got that way with the aura compared to the other formulas. And if you want to look at within 3/4 a diopter, that would be the darker shade of the orange and the blue. And basically 94% of the eyes were within a diopter. So this is 246 eyes from multiple practices showing the value of that. So if you do have post-myopic LASIK PRK patients, and we use this obviously for hyperopic PRK LASIK as well, you can use it for RK, but essentially you're going to use it, I use it for any of the patients, whether I'm going to do a monofocal, I'll still check the spherical power. Certainly, again, I may use a toric, and then it gives you a confirmation of, do I want to use this sphere, this cylinder, and this axis? Certainly, if you're going to do a multifocal, although I must say that I rarely am putting multifocals in post-LASIK eyes. Certainly, astigmatic keratotomy. And, you know, whereas normally we sort of incorporate the extra charge of this in the advanced technology IOL fee, for the LASIK patients, whether I do a monofocal, I will still charge this as a refractive diagnostic service. So let's talk about astigmatic management, and this is sort of the third generation of the aura system, and it was the first time, it's called Verify, and I believe that's what will be released here. It's the first time they have continuous aberrometry that they're going to show you. It's like a continuous autorefraction. So if you think about where do we need help, let's look at a toric IOL. And we have a couple issues. We have to choose the axis alignment, and I think you're all aware that frequently there's a discrepancy between the topography, the keratometry, maybe your manual Ks. So which axis do I choose? You know, one thing we don't often think about is how good are our staff at making sure the head's not tilted, right? Because if you look at the topography, you don't know if the patient's head was tilted 10 degrees. And then I have to make sure, what if my ink marks aren't exactly at 180 degrees? And what's the effect of my incision? With the cylinder power, we again often have that discrepancy between two different methods, and we also don't know about how much posterior corneal astigmatism will affect our result. So let's see how this would help us. So again, think of this as a double check. It's a way to confirm your preoperative diagnostics, confirming the spherical and the cylinder power as well as the axis. And also then to do the pseudophakic reading, it will help you align the toric. So here you can see an aphakic eye. There's my toric axis that I've been marked. And so we're lining the patient up here. And I'm going to do now an aphakic reading. The eye's been inflated with viscoelastic to a pressure of 20. And if you look at the top, you see the real-time reading. And this is now a quick average of 40 consecutive readings. You see how quick that was, just a matter of seconds. And then we always do a second formal reading. So when we press that lower button now, we're going to get 40 readings that are averaged. And then it's going to give me a prediction. So you see 22 diopters right here is predicting a minus 0.32. And on the right-hand side, you can see here, this is the aphakic refraction. So I look at that for the cylinder and the axis. So it's basically saying a diopter at 95 degrees. So that fit with my T3 22.0 prediction. So we go ahead and we put that lens in now. This is the T3, the 22.0. And then if you look at the top of the screen, there is actually the real-time refraction, and you look at the cylinder there. So we're going to do a reading here, and I have not got the lens lined up exactly right, and it detects that there's 0.72 of cylinder left, and it says rotate it clockwise. So here I'm rotating it a little bit more. You can see the real-time refraction up at the top, a continuous readout. And when I think I've got it where we want, we'll go ahead and do a formal reading again. But so there you can see it's going down to 0.25. Now, each time I look at that, I have to lift the speculum because the speculum itself, just the weight of that, will induce some change. And then no rotation recommended. NRR means you can stop because the residual cylinder now is 0.14. You see right here is the amount of cylinder. So if you look on the side, you can see, first of all, the aphakic reading said there was a diopter at 99. And then the second reading was after I put the toric lens in, but I didn't have it on the right axis. There was 0.72 left over. And then when I finally got it lined up optimally, it dropped it to 0.14. All right, the other place that where this is really nice is for astigmatism management. So I actually, myself, don't use the femtosecond. I use astigmatic keratotomy manually. And what I do is I will measure for the cylinder after the IOL is in place. And then I'll lay down my first and maybe my second astigmatic keratotomy incision while using the real-time refraction as a guide. I can then do a measurement after I think I'm done and go back and lengthen the incisions if I need to. So here we have a three-piece technus. After the lens was in, I did a reading, and I had a diopter at 97. I went ahead and did my 2 LRIs. I did another reading, and you can confirm basically that you had the desired effect on the cylinder, which I think is great, because it used to be you'd wait until a couple weeks post-operatively and try to see what the effect of the cylinder was. So here is a different patient here. Look at 0.85 at axis 155. Okay, that makes sense. And then right up here now is the real-time refraction. You have to lift the speculum to really read that. Now I'm going to go down and put down the first of my 2 planned LRIs at that 160 axis. So when I do that, I lift up the speculum. I see at the top, I still have about a half diopter at 160 or so. So I'll go ahead and I'll make the second incision. And then at this point, we've made 2 incisions. Let's go ahead and do a formal reading. So we hit that bottom right button that says capture. There's 40 readings quickly averaged, and you can see the effect, can't you? You can see that we started with 0.85, and after 2 incisions, we went down to 0.23. Now this is a case of a restore, and I've got 0.96 at 173. So I'm going to probably do 2 astigmatic keratotomy incisions here. So this is now a real-time reading. And again, if you really want to pay attention to it, you have to, of course, lift the speculum. Once I put this fine Thornton ring down, that's going to induce some artifact. But we're going to make first 1 incision. So here I'm really just looking at my incision. And then I'll lift the speculum and see what's left. And I still have, well, it looks pretty low. So maybe I don't need to make the second incision. Let me lift that speculum up. See, it's down to about 0.38. So instead of making my second incision, I hit the capture button, because I've only made 1 out of 2. And let's see what we've got now. And the winner, well, look at that. We're down to a quarter. So in this case, I'm not even going to make the second incision. So I've titrated at that. We already have a pretty good endpoint. So here's another restore patient. Okay, now look over here at the pre-op. This is from the IOL master. A half diopter at axis 24. A half diopter, I wasn't really going to do anything. But then after I put the IOL in, I look and I do a measurement, and there's a diopter against the rule. Wow. So you know with a restore, you don't want to end up with a diopter against the rule. Maybe there's some posterior corneal astigmatism, not sure, but seeing that we're measuring that, I'm going to go ahead and treat that, and I got it down to 0.1, and that correlated very well post-operatively. Here's another restore patient. This time there was a diopter, you see at axis 26, but here we've got a diopter against the rule. You have to be concerned, of course, that there could be artifact. You know, what about the speculum? What about the lid? So that's why the eye has to be inflated to that 20 millimeters. You use a little tonometer to make sure you have the right pressure. And I always do the readings by lifting up the lid speculum. And if you're not sure, you do it again. There's a little learning curve with that, but after a while, you know you're doing it the same way every time, and it works. And then we go ahead and do the LRIs and confirm that the astigmatism has been lowered. The one thing you will need to get used to it adds about an inch and a half to the microscope profile, so you have to use a 200 millimeter objective lens to give more working distance. Most of the instruments we use come in at an angle. The 2 that don't are my fine Thornton ring and the LRI blade. So I had to work with some of the companies, no financial interest, to just make a shorter version so that I can use these instruments in an upright fashion. Perhaps there'll be questions, but I think this is a really helpful technology, and it's not something I think that you can follow blindly. You're still going to rely on your preoperative diagnostics, pick the lens, go by that. And I think we were talking at the breakfast this morning, where it really helps is it turns out frequently you're just not sure, do I want to do a 20 or a 20.5 restore? Do I want to do a T4 or a T5? Do I want the axis at 165 or 155? And this can serve as a tiebreaker. And that's really when intraoperatively you get that extra reading and it makes a difference. So I think if you don't have a guidance system for your toric, which would be like the Varian that was just shown, or Zeiss has one called Callisto. If you don't have that, you can definitely be off as much as 5 or 10 degrees just from your marks, and you can use this to sort of move it 5 or 10 degrees, and remeasure, and to titrate your toric axis. So it's certainly something to look at for those of you doing refractive cataract surgery. Thank you.